qualifications for
Yeah.
that position, huh?
Yeah.
Are there any other aspects of the training of women or minorities at the apprenticeship level and at the center that you want to tell us about?
Well, not in '79, you just couldn't get on the equipment, but as the instructors changed to Butch Schockman and Dan Wicklander, then we have finally gotten them to the point to show us how to make excavations. It took us 10 years before they would show us the proper technique on how to make an excavation or build a crawl space or any type of task that a foreman might ask you. Okay, so this was the first time they were giving instruction on technique. And so they'll show you techniques on how to make a V-ditch that will take an hour to do, or hour and a half to do, but really there's a way you can do it in 20 minutes. Another guy will come show you how to do it in 20 minutes, you know. So if you get a job and the only way you know how to make a V-ditch is the way this guy showed you, he would fire you because you took too long, you know, making the V-ditch. You're taking too long, see. And
now, did you feel that you were getting taught inadequate technique as compared to others who were getting trained at the same time?
Yes.
And who were the others who were getting the real training in that sense?
All the Caucasian men and some of the women. See, that year, Dan Wicklander and Butch Schockman were showing me how to make a V-ditch, and I practiced this all month. I got to be on the equipment for a month all by myself. The next month I came down and I practiced this V-ditch, and they said, this is how you do it, and I've been practicing it that way, and I felt I was getting close to journeyman level, and I was going to take my test, or, you know, I wanted to see what the test was like, so I went through a trial run, you know, of the test. Okay, well, I could do all the tasks, but the timing, like, it took a little bit too long, like a half hour too long, you know. Okay, so the next year when I came to training, they had a different instructor named Bob Graves. Okay, so I'm out, you know, we're out training, and I'm making this V-ditch, and Bob Graves drives up, and he's, oh, what the hell are you doing, you know? That's not the way you make a V-ditch, you know? So he gets out, and he shows me how to make this V-ditch, and it only takes 20 minutes. So these other 2 months I was training to make this V-ditch was the wrong way to make the V-ditch, and they knew that because they don't want you to keep your job when you get out there. See, they want you to learn a way that will take you 2 hours where you normally would take you 1 hour to do the job if you knew what you were doing, see. And I brought that up at the JATC meeting, and Dan Wicklander says, the reason he showed me that way is because it depends on the material, which way you do it. But he never showed me the other way, how to dig a V-ditch. So I couldn't say much on that.
Let's maybe go back in time then to the early 80s when you had a couple of the initial trainings, and can you tell us about any jobs that you were referred to after that?
In the early 80s, I was a deckhand, an oiler, a lift truck operator.
Did that count towards the?
No.
No.
No, those are just hours that you get. A roller operator.
No, that did count toward
No. No. See, to be a journeyman, it has to be earth-moving equipment. It can't be, it has to be a front-end loader, or a cat, or a blade, or a crane, or a scraper, or that's about it. But you can be journeyman on other pieces of equipment, like a paving machine. You would be a journeyman paver, but you would not be a universal equipment operator. You would not be an operating engineer. You'd just be a
journeyman roller operator.
Yeah, or a paver operator.
Would you call? Did you try to get work on the heavy equipment? Did you let the union know that you were interested in getting those kinds of jobs?
Yes, we called, we begged, but we never got jobs on heavy equipment.
Who's the we, Mr.
All the black people in the union, all the black apprentices, young apprentices coming up, and we just never got jobs on equipment.
So would you show up or call? How often?
Oh, about twice every 2 weeks, or maybe 6 times a month.
What would you be told? What would they say when you would call and ask if there was work?
Well, they have a number system, and they say that I was number 89 or 67 or something like that. See, and then they send out an apprentice, and then you move down, supposedly, but there's no number system. They just tell you they have a number system and give you a number, and give those jobs to whoever they want to, their cousins, their lovers, their friends, their friends. They give those jobs to whomever they want to, people that aren't even in the union. And then if they have a job, a miscellaneous job, then you may get a job. Or if somebody takes a vacation from his job in July, then you'll get a job until he gets back from vacation. And then you're put on the out-of-work list again, which is about, I don't know, I think it's about 300 members,
Are you aware of different lists? Mr. Kirkland told us about a list that you had to pay to be put on, and his perception that was a different status kind of list from the regular list.
Yes, well...
Do you have any familiarity with that?
Yes, you can, anybody that hasn't been in the union, doesn't know anything about equipment, if they have $1,000, they can go in and buy a journeyman card.
Buy a journeyman card?
Yes, for $1,000, and then they're considered journeymen, and they get dispatched as journeymen, and they get the jobs.
Now, how was that explained to you or justified, since you were working so hard to try to get the hours that would entitle you to the journey level status?
Well, it was never really justified to me, and I didn't find out about it till about a year ago. See, as I've been through the program, each training session, the rules change as I'm going along. See, when I first came in, it was just you get so many hours on these pieces of equipment and you become a journeyman, okay? Okay, so then the next trainers come in, and now I find out that you can just go on and buy your card, and then you're a journeyman.
Have you ever known a person of color, an African American or other minority, who's been able to spend $1,000 and buy the card?
No.
Do you know of anybody, period,
Yes.
spent $1,000 and bought the card?
Yes, Don Millett. I was at a training 2 years ago. He was a beginning apprentice, never been on a piece of heavy equipment in his life. He paid $1,000, and they made him a journeyman, and now he's getting paid $18, $19 an hour, and isn't skilled, and he doesn't know how to run equipment, but he's white, quote unquote, and
Do you know of any other examples like that?
no.
Do you know of anyone, any African American man or woman who tried to come up with that kind of money? Was anyone turned down? Have you ever heard
No.
any anecdotes or stories about that?
No, it's just, I mean, after going through this type of treatment for so many years, I mean, and getting treated the way I'm treated, I'm not going to pay somebody $1,000 to get treated, to get, you know, discriminated against. See, so I could pay them $1,000, I could get my journeyman card, but they would continue to treat me the same way. They would just extort money from me 2 times, you know.
Is this common knowledge in the, you know, within the operating engineer's trade?
Yes, yes, this is institutionalized. I mean, the officers, the members, the head officers, you know, they have this scam going.
So in other words, an individual off the street with no training could pay $1,000 and end up being dispatched to journey level operating engineer.
Yes. I could train for 5 years and be pretty proficient on the equipment, but I wouldn't get a job because, you know, I wouldn't get paid as a journeyman and I wouldn't get dispatched as a journeyman, you know, because I was apprentice.
I've calculated up about a 10-year period between the very early, when you first signed up, when you first participated in the training, and the late 80s, when I know you were terminated. In that 10-year period, how much do you think you actually worked? How many weeks of work did you have in total? And this can be a real rough estimate. I'm sure it's hard to construct.
About 42 weeks.
So under 1 year in that 10-year period,
Yes.
paid work. And were you paying your union dues throughout that period?
Yes, every month.
And you were requesting referrals?
Yes.
And participating in the mandatory training?
In the training and everything. I was in good standing.
Let's move then to the job from which you were terminated. Well, let's go back. You were thrown out of the apprenticeship program at one point in the late 80s, right? Was that in the context of a particular job that you were working, or how did that happen?
Well, it happened, well, because of my progress. Okay, they were saying I was inadequate. Okay, so after, you know, I've been training for 10 years, and they never let me drive the equipment, get hands-on training on driving equipment. Okay, so after these 10 years, I worked my hours up on miscellaneous jobs to the 95% level of journeyman pay scale. So when they dispatched me as a deckhand, they'd still have to pay me journeyman scale, but as a deckhand. Okay, so I had not been trained on equipment, so I was at this 95% level. So they told me I had to come down and take the test to pass the journeyman. You know, you have to pass 3 tests, TSP tests, to become a full-fledged journeyman. That's 3, you have to operate 3 pieces of equipment at journeyman level and pass your tests on those 3 pieces of equipment before you're considered a universal equipment operator.
And what happened? So they told you had to come in and take the test?
Yes.
And who, the they being 701?
Yes, Gary Stone and Ed Harper, the training center. And I had driven the front-end loader for 3 months on my first job, but this was 10 years later. And so I was supposed to come take this test. And so they had never showed me technique on the front-end loader, how to build a crawl space and these different tasks that they wanted me to do. So naturally, I failed. Okay, so they called me up before the JATC board. Well, then they gave me another job, and it was a piece of heavy equipment, but that I have never seen and I never been on.
What kind of equipment was it? Do you remember?
I think it was a backhoe. And I was at a 95% level. And the contractors can see, you know, what level you are. He knows I'm not 95%, you know, because I've never been on the equipment. He could see that, okay. So he laid me off, and because he really wanted a 95% operator that knew how to operate the equipment. And they called me before the JATC board and asked why couldn't I handle it. I've been in the union for 10 years, and I've been on different jobs. And I said, well, you never ever sent me out as an operator on a piece of equipment, and you never let me get on the equipment and training. And they says, well, you've been here for 10 years, and you know, you should have, you know, weaseled your way in or found, you know, learned some kind of way. And I says, well, how am I going to learn if you don't dispatch me on a heavy equipment job and give me on-the-job training like you, you know, said you would? And they said, well, we're going to have to let you go because you're inadequate. So that's what happened. That's why I was terminated.
So your apprenticeship was terminated at that time, and that was 88 or 89, do you recall?
88.
Okay. What happened next?
I filed a lawsuit, discrimination lawsuit against Local 701 and the training center and its officers.
And where did you file the lawsuit?
The state of Oregon, at the state office building.
At the Bureau of Labor
Bureau of
Industries?
Labor and Industries, yes.
Okay. Can you recall what happened generally there? What did they offer you? What did you obtain? What was the outcome?
Well, the Bureau of Labor Industries, the lady that was going to, the investigator, they had one investigator, she put 200 cases on her desk and said, I'm number 201, and maybe in 2 years she might be able to, you know, start investigating my case. So, you know, I didn't have 2 years to wait around for to get to my case.
So then what happened, or what did you do?
Well, we started negotiating with Gene Mechanic, Local 701's attorney, and they agreed that, you know, what I was saying was true because they didn't let me on the equipment and they didn't train me. And so eventually they readmitted me in the union.
Did they at any point offer you any money to quit the union?
Yes, they offered me $5,000 to terminate my, you know, to quit the union.
Altogether?
Yeah, $5,000.
And what did you say to that?
I said no, I didn't want, I wanted to finish my apprenticeship and be a heavy equipment operator.
So then they offered you a different settlement, is that?
Yes, they they said they would accept me back and give me, let me get on the heavy equipment and train me and do everything possible they could do to help me graduate and get my journeyman card.
And did they keep their promise?
No. They went right back to the same treatment I was getting before. They never lived up to their agreement with me. I asked for 200 hours worth of work in Portland so I could obtain, you know, the capital to, if they were going to send me to another state or another city or something, I'd have enough to relocate. Okay, and I expected it to be just at one job, 200 hours, and then I'd be ready. Okay, they haven't, it's been 3 years and they haven't lived up to the 200 hours yet. I've gotten 1 day work here for 1 year. Next year I get a week worth of work. And then the next year I might get 2 more weeks worth of work. And
did you have any further training after the settlement?
yes, that's when I got to drive a backhoe and stay on it for 30 days.
That was at Boardman?
Yes.
Oh, so that was when you had that opportunity?
Yes.
What was your experience at that time?
What?
With the training? Was that good training or
Yes,
helpful?
it was helpful. So like I said, they show you how to make excavations where you'd be a failure when you went on the job, because it would take you, you know, I couldn't tell if it was a good excavation or a bad one until I had another trainer come in and tell me that I was doing it wrong, you know.
So it was helpful training, but it wasn't accurate training.
Yeah.
It wasn't actually training you to succeed when you went out.
Pardon?
It wasn't actually teaching you the real way to.
No, they were
to
training you to
perform
be
the-
a failure on the piece of equipment.
What happened after that training? Did you have any other jobs that you can recollect for us?
Yes. I was then dispatched to Bencore at the at Bonneville, up at Bonneville. I was dispatched to Bencore, and I was dispatched as an oiler on a crane.
Mm-hmm.
And I volunteered for the drug test, took my drug test, and passed the drug screening. And I got to the job, and nobody on the whole construction site could speak English. They spoke Italian, from the foreman to the supervisor to the workers. Everybody spoke Italian, except for the operators and maybe some of the, you know, carpenters and stuff. So I never understood what they were saying or what they were telling me to do. Like, the superintendent would go, and I wouldn't know what he was telling me to do, and we had a hard time getting along, and I think I was put out there just to, you know, just to be a failure. Again, I was programmed to be a failure because they knew I couldn't speak Italian, and they get tired of me trying to understand what they were saying. So the guy finally told me to get off his job site. That was for 2 days. Wait, that was for 2 days.
Did they say why they wanted you to leave the job site?
No.
Okay. It had nothing to do.
Well, they said that the work I was doing I wasn't doing the type of work that they wanted me to do. But I couldn't understand what the guy was saying or what the foreman wanted or anything they wanted me to do because they were speaking in Italian, and I don't know Italian. And on that job, I was called before the JATC board, and Butch Shockman, he's that head trainer at Boardman, says that I walked off that job. And I have a letter from Dan, what's his name, Jim Ryderbush, that said, you know, that said everything that I did was all right. So Dan came to this meeting, I mean not Dan, Butch came into this meeting and said that I walked off the job, and I didn't, and he's been, they make up lies on you as time goes along to get you thrown out and get you terminated. They extort money from members, blacks, women. This is the system that they go through. They train you and send you out on miscellaneous jobs, and over all these years you're paying union dues. Say after 5 years you've been sent out on miscellaneous jobs and you've been paying union dues for 5 years plus the initiation fee, and then they call you up before the board and say that you're inadequate and terminate you and take your money. And they don't give you nothing, no training, no jobs, no nothing. And that's the system they have. And then once, you know, then they go out to Jefferson and recruit other blacks. And the same thing goes on and on.
Did you ever hear any statements or receive any aspects of behavior or conduct from any of the trainers or other people associated with the union that you felt was discriminatory? Racial epithets, conduct, anything like that?
Oh, they're blatantly, they have racist policies in place, and they treat you like, They treat you really bad down at that training center. You're really isolated.
Can you give us details about that?
Okay, well, after you do your training during the day, you have $100 and you go to get something to eat. There's only 2-3 places there, and they follow you around at night.
What do you mean by that?
You're under surveillance. I mean, like if I went to go have a hamburger, cheeseburger somewhere, Harold Gaynor would be back there watching what I was doing. I mean, everywhere I went, there was always somebody following me.
Did they follow the white men around in the same way?
No, no. No, they just followed us around because they were looking for some reason to terminate the blacks and the women.
What kind of reasons would they get during your off time? I mean,
What kind of what?
reasons could they use when you weren't working? You were basically on your own time at that point. What kind of things could they get?
Oh, they could say you were at the tavern, well, the tavern past 10, and you were drinking. But even though you made it to class the next morning, you stayed out to 10 that night. And if you do that here, then that's what you're going to do on your job. And they terminate you because they, think you go out drinking every night and not make it to work.
Did they check up and see whether any of the white apprentices were out drinking at 10 o'clock at night and threatened to terminate them?
They checked on them, but they don't threaten to terminate them, Like they can stay out and do what they want to. They're not under surveillance. It's just the blacks, the women, and minorities,
Were there any other examples that you can recall of discriminatory treatment or
But during training?
Were any statements ever made to you about blacks or your abilities or the abilities of women trainees or anything like that?
Yes, Gary Stone, he was the trainer in '79, the second trainer, and he said that the reason that in the training, like we had a meeting and we got there in the morning, and he says that blacks are inferior, and that's why that they don't have blacks in the construction field, because they can't handle, they don't have the knowledge to be in construction. And I didn't feel like I was inferior. So.
You told me when we met the other time about Francis Wicklander who was involved with the union.
Yes, he's the business secretary, and he's one of the main officers. And what he says goes, And he's just he's a racist guy, and he doesn't want any blacks in his union. And the Wicklanders, basically Dan and Francis, run the union.
Why do you believe that he's a racist?
Why? Well, because he terminated me on unjust cause. Butch Shockman came in and fabricated stories about me, that I walked off jobs, that I never walked off jobs, and nobody stepped in and said, is this true, or they just believe Butch Shockman, see. And he's been letting this type of treatment go on for 14 years. I mean, he hasn't dispatched me on any jobs. They've been extorting money from me, from the federal government, from the state, and that just tells me that he has racist policies intact. And after so many years, they get rid of their blacks so they can get new blacks and extort money from them, see.
Can I pick up on something you just said and ask you questions about your comment that they extort money from the feds and from the state? Can you explain that?
Well, okay, say they have so many, they say Local 701 says they have so many minorities and they're training so many minorities. They get money from the federal government to train those minorities and give them jobs to make sure they come out, operators, useful citizens. Okay, so they say they have these people and they're training them, but Local 701 doesn't give them jobs, you know, so they can complete their, you know, apprenticeship or be heavy equipment operators. They give them jobs, miscellaneous jobs, so they'll be failures and they won't know how to drive the heavy equipment. And when you do get a job, I'd have to go through the companies, but I've been on a lot of jobs where 701 will dispatch you. It's called the buddy-buddy system. It's between the contractors and Local 701. They send you out on a job, and the contractor will work you for one day at whatever job you're doing and tell you, well, call in the next day, start calling in, and send you home, okay? So then you call in every day, and they'll say there's no work. So you won't have to come in, but all this time, they're building a federal highway, federal-funded highway, or a hospital, and they're getting matching funds, and they're getting paid for having so many minorities work on their on this project. And really, they don't have any minorities, and they're not working minorities. They're just extorting money from the federal government, from the state, and they're not working black people at all.
Do you have any sense of the ways in which this may affect women apprentices? Are the women apprentices bona fide apprentices? Do you have any experiences with specific issues with respect to them?
Experiences?
Or knowledge about?
Yes, they go through the same treatment, and Pat has talked to me. Well, I know a lady named Pat, and she's a journeyman paver operator, but she never got to sit on a heavy equipment, and she signed up to be a heavy equipment operator, universal equipment operator, but they never gave her jobs on heavy equipment. They trained her on this paving machine, because on a paving machine you get paid less. Like the equipment jobs, you get paid $18, $19, $20 an hour, okay? If you go out as an oiler, you get $9 an hour, okay? And if you're at a 60% level in your apprenticeship, 60% of $9 isn't very much. While the Caucasian men get to drive the equipment, it's $18 an hour, $20 an hour, and 60% of $18 an hour is a lot more than on these miscellaneous jobs. So that's how they economically discriminate.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any other information about sexual harassment issues with women in the programs?
Yes, I witnessed sexual harassment from one of the trainers, Gary Stone. He was driving a scraper. That's a big piece of equipment, and he was in the driver's seat, and he told her to hold on to the rollover protection, you know, so she wouldn't fall off, okay?
This was an apprentice observing Gary drive this piece of machinery?
Yes, training this woman, you know. Okay, so she has to hug onto the rollover device or she'll fall off because the equipment's so rough and it lopes and everything. Okay, so Gary's driving the equipment saying, well, okay, now you gotta do this. And he's acting like he's trying to hold on to the lady. Her name was Alice. He's trying to keep her on the equipment. All the time he's grabbing her tits, he's grabbing under her crotch, grabbing her legs. He's just, you know, just molesting her, you know, and I watched him go around the circle, and he comes back around, and he's still doing it, you know, just grabbing her. And I says, well, golly, you know. So I brought it up to Butch Shockman, and he didn't believe me. And so eventually he went around and asked all the women, and they said, yeah, that he had been molesting them, and that was all that was said of it.
Do you know whether anything ever happened to him, to this guy?
Nothing happened to him, nothing. He wasn't disciplined in any way, you know.
How can you be so sure of that?
You know, because he was still teaching the class, and the next morning in grade checking class, he denied everything that had been, you know, said about him. But I was standing there watching him, and all the other apprentice women said yes, that he was molesting him. So how could he deny it? And he wasn't, you know, he didn't lose his job or nothing. And he takes women. He puts us all. They put us all in different places, you know, in the desert somewhere. They might drive us somewhere and drop us off, and come back 4 hours later. We're in the desert, see, and they might get a woman in their truck and drive off to some secluded area, and you know, grab her legs and grab her tits and molest her, see, and they do that too. I've seen that, me and Norm Kirkland witnessed it. And the women that object or don't go along with this type of treatment, they seem to get treated like all the other minorities, and the ones that don't complain about this type of treatment seem to graduate and get good jobs and drive equipment and get offered those types of jobs.
My notes bring me back to 1990 and a job you had with Lakeside Paving, and then a few other jobs that you had after the settlement with
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to, do you recall any aspects of that job?
Of Lakeside, I think I was dispatched as a roller operator, and I had never been on a roller before, never driven one. And it was 108 degrees that day, one of the highest days in Portland. And so the guy was showing me how to run the roller and you know, the technique on running the roller after they put the asphalt down. But you'd have to wait for a while and let the asphalt cool down before you run a roller over it, see. So the guy let me, you know, that was training me, gave me my time to run the roller, and I ran it up and started to come back, and the asphalt started rolling on the roller, see. It was too hot, see. So the guy started yelling at me and told me, you know, that I wasn't shit and get off the equipment and everything. And really what it was is just, it was 106 degrees that day, you know. So the asphalt didn't cool like it normally would. So that was that job.
So you only, how long did you actually work there?
Oh, about a week.
Did you get offered any further work from that company?
From Lakeside? Yes. I was a bobcat operator. I was dispatched as a bobcat operator. And Butch called me and said it was a 3-day job, but they really needed somebody to load these barges and get them off, you know. And I would be driving bobcat. So I got to the job, and the job was loading this barge, you know, of real long crewing wood, you know. It's about 30, 40 feet long, and they're about 6 by 10, you know, about 40 foot long. And the job was just labor, just, you know, I'd have to carry these long pieces of wood and stick it on the barge, and eventually it looked like a gym floor, but it was just labor. I didn't get...
So was a bobcat involved, you're saying?
Well, there was a bobcat involved, like taking the garbage and dumping it or something like that, but the job was labor, like stacking lumber. That's about what I was doing.
How long did you work that job?
3 days, and I was laid off, and I was eligible for rehire, and I did a satisfactory job, and Butch Shockman claimed that I walked off this job too. And he brought that up in the JATC meeting, and socially, that's social discrimination, because I didn't walk off a job. I have a termination slip that says I was ready for rehire and the job was completed and satisfactory, but he's a head trainer and he's fabricated these stories against me, so how can I fight that?
You told us about an incident right after this time where you were sent to Mount St. Helens. And I wonder if you can tell me what happened with that.
The scraper?
Yeah.
Okay, Dan Wicklander calls me after, right after a training period, and
What year was this race?
this was last, well, let's see, did I work last summer? This was last summer. And I had been trained on a backhoe and a front end loader. I'd never ever been on a scraper in my life. Okay, so he calls me up and says he has a scraper operator job for me, and it's at night and it's kind of dangerous. And he wanted me to drive from the top of Mount St. Helens down to the bottom at 60 miles an hour, make a turn and come back around. And on a 966 scraper, which is a humongous piece of equipment, and I'd never been on it. And there's a foot drop off on, there's a foot room on each side with about 1,000-foot drop off on each side. And he wants me to go down this hill and drive the scraper, and I've never been on it, see.
Was this what he described to you when he just called you and said, I've got a job, you've got to drive somewhere? Or was this information given to you once you arrived at the site?
No, this was information given to me on the phone. He said it was a dangerous job and it was at night.
Did you agree to do it?
No, because you're not supposed to turn down jobs, but you know, if you feel that you're going to kill yourself or hurt somebody and you're not proficient on this equipment, then you can turn it down. Mm-hmm. And I felt as though I'd never been on the equipment before in my life, and I didn't think I was good enough to drive it down Mount St. Helens with a 1,000-foot drop-off at night.
Is this connected to the incident where you drove 70 miles out to a job and then were sent down a forest road and ended up
okay,
in your
that's
car?
it's the same place, but different. I was dispatched as a roller operator when I went up to,
What year was
this was last 91, 92, 91. Yeah, I was dispatched as a roller operator, and the city was, it was over 100 miles away. I forget the name of the city, but anyways, it's to Mount St. Helens. So I drove 70 miles to up the freeway and another 20 miles to the job site. And the guy gives me a map and shows me, says, you're here and you're supposed to, this is where you work at, you know. Showed me this map and says, well, they have this trail with a ribbon on it, just follow the ribbon trail and eventually you'll get there. And so I went up this logging road, and the logging road was so bad that it tore off my car, tore off the tailpipe, tore off the muffler, punctured holes in my water hose, the bottom one. And so there was no place to turn around, and I started backing up, and I just couldn't make it to the job because the road was so terrible. And so I called Butch and told him that the road was terrible and that I, couldn't make it. And so he said he'd call in and have him fix the road. So he called in and had him fix the road. And then they gave the job to somebody else.
What happened to your car?
Well, it broke down on me before I got back to Portland because of all the damage the road had done to my car. And so I had to get a new suspension, a new muffler, a new pipe, and I had it fixed in 2 days, but that was too late.
Too late for what?
To get my job back,
So the fact that your car was wrecked had a consequence for you in terms of...
Yes.
And could you explain that to us?
Well, Butch says that I was being terminated from the program because my car was in good condition, good, working condition. And my car was in good working condition until I got on that logging road. I drove 70 miles to get just to the job and another 20 miles to get to the work site. And then he puts me on this logging road, and that's over 100 miles my car has gone, and there was no problem until I got on the logging road, and all these big rocks and big holes and things tore off the bottom of my car, see. So how could he say my car isn't in good working condition? It was great until I got on that logging road.
Yeah. Were there any other jobs that you were referred to at this point in time? I know there's one other example that I believe you gave us where you were sent way far away.
To Meacham, Oregon, yeah.
Can you describe that situation?
Okay, this is, the trainers at this time were Ed Harper and Gary Stone. And Gary Stone called me at 12 noon and told me that they had a job for me in Meacham, Oregon as a plant operator, rock crusher plant operator. And that's in Meacham, Oregon, and that I had better buy a boat. And he started laughing, you know, and said I was supposed to be there at 4. Okay, Meacham, Oregon is, it takes you more than 4 hours to drive to Meacham, Oregon. And so by the time I got to the job, it was, I'd say 4 hours, 45 minutes late, nobody was at the job. And then I was stuck out in Meacham, Oregon, and I drove back and my car broke down. And so I basically ended up hitchhiking and ride home and get my car towed back in. But they knew that I didn't have enough time to get to Meacham, Oregon when they gave me the dispatch.
Could you, you mentioned in an earlier conversation that you were dispatched to 2 sites after the Mount St. Helens eruption in 1980? Could you talk about that?
Okay, I got hired by Rydell as a deckhand, and I worked down here at the Rydell Corporation in Portland, cleaning out the hull of a boat and dumping oil in the river. See, the whole inside of this boat was all just oil, you know, dirty sludge oil, and so I had to clean it up, and they told me to dump it in the river. So I dumped it in the river and cleaned it up, and then they got the barge going, and then they took the barge down to the Toutle River. And I worked as a deckhand for Rydell at the Toutle River. And John Drayton was my foreman. And he used to talk to me worse than anybody ever talked to me in my life. He used to, you know.
How that, Reggie, what we say?
He'd say, you know, throw that rope over there, you know, after you get through with that, bring your black ass over here, you know. When you get through with that, bring your black ass over here and do this, and then when you finish with that, you know, bring your black ass and, you know, I'll have something else for you to do, you know. And it was constantly, you know, black ass or nigger all day long that, you know, I just didn't feel good working with the guy, you know.
Did he ever make any other types of comments, you recall?
Yes, I came in one Monday and he's, you know, he says, what do you, he says, well, what do you niggers do on weekends, you know, because, you know, I'd been there for a while and he's kind of trying to get to know me. And I said, oh, well, I don't know, just watch football or kick it around, you know, do whatever. He says, well, you know what I did this weekend? I said, what? He says, I fucked the hell out of your black ass mother, you know, and she gives good head. And so I just walked on to, you know, what I was going to do. I tried to ignore him.
Do you think that the union had any way of knowing that he was doing this or what was going on?
Yes, there was a field rep. He was talking to a field rep at the time of this incident from locals.
So that field rep would have heard this
Yes.
exact incident?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the field rep's name?
No, but you could, you know, you could go through the years and find it.
What year was that?
The year the mountain went off.
You also mentioned another incident you had. I think you were using a backhoe. Oh no, not a backhoe, but a blade.
Yeah, I was working for Lacey, and you know, the volcano had just gone off, and everybody was afraid to go up there. So there have been times when I haven't had jobs for 2 years. You know, there have been stenches, 2 years, 1 year, stenches of being unemployed. So the mountain went off, and this is that they'll give Reggie a job, you know, and make him a CAT operator and send him up to Mount St. Helens because everybody else was scared to go up there. I was one of the first ones up there. So my job was to push the sand out and level it out, you know. And I was doing that, and as I was leveling sand out, you know, there's this big steam vent that would pop up behind me, and I would see cars in the, you know, buried in the ground, people, you know, deer sticking up out of the ground, you know, but I was just supposed to bury all this stuff, and just, it was really dangerous. And that was one of the times I got to drive equipment, but I was just pushing sand around. I wasn't doing anything that required technique.
Did you ever complain about any of this to the state or to the union? Were there any people that you attempted to talk about?
Yes, I complained to the trainers. I complained to all the officers, and I complained to the state Bureau of Labor and Industries, and some guy says he went down there for 3 days and that they're not discriminating, and everything I'm saying is false, and that's not true. I mean, they don't want to rock the boat. People in the state don't want to rock the boat because if they start messing with Local 701, they'll lose their job, you know, because they rock the boat, see. So they're afraid to lose their jobs and do something to remedy these problems.
Who are the they at the state? Who are the people that you would have talked to? If not the names, what kinds of positions? Were they involved with the union training programs?
I talked to one guy named Garber, and there was a black man that works there, and I don't know his name, but he's the one that tried to sidetrack me and tell me that there was no discrimination going on, see. And if he says there's discrimination going on, him being a black man, he'd probably lose his job, see, and so he doesn't want to rock the boat, so that's why he claims there's no discrimination going on, see. So I think the state and the union and the contractors are together, but more so the contractor and the union. Like, I'm not sure about the state, but the state seemed to be dragging their feet when I explained to them what's going on. I've been explaining this for years, you know, to the state.
What forms the basis of your sense that the contractors and the unions are in this together with one another?
Well, because they send minorities out and they work them for a day or a week, and then they send them home and tell them to call in, see. And see, they're doing a federally funded highway or something that, you know, that they get money from the state and the federal government for. And if they don't have minorities, so many minorities out there, they wouldn't be on that job and they couldn't do that job. So they're claiming that they have minorities and that they're working them, and really you're sitting at home calling in every day, see. And then, like, they might call you to come in because they know the inspector's coming. So you may work that day, and after the inspector leaves, then they send you home, and you don't get any work. And you're economically discriminated against while they collect the federal dollars, the matching funds, for doing this highway, and then they get action on other bids, you know, like they can get other jobs really easily because the federal government thinks they're going through the correct channels, and they're not.
Did you have ever any experience with 701 finding women who were on welfare and using the funds to entice women in that situation into the program?
What welfare women to get them in the program?
Yeah, and sending them up to Boardman?
Oh yes, yes. They recruit women every year. I think it's every year, and they send them up to Boardman. Maybe women that they pick women that I don't think that could do the job or lift even 50 pounds. Like,
and what are they getting out of the situation?
The women?
Well, either side.
Well, the men, they get to molest the women down there and maybe get a little sexual intercourse or something like that, and the women get dispatched really fast on driving heavy equipment.
So you think some of these women aren't qualified? And some of them are?
Yeah, some of them are and some of them aren't. Most of them aren't, see. And see, then you have the high accident rate in the construction field. It's because of these practices that they're doing. The qualified people are sitting at home, and they don't get to work because they're black, and they're sending unqualified Caucasian people out there and paying them journeyman scale, and they're not qualified, and that's why you have this big accident rate going.
Are there any other women who you know who can amplify or confirm or tell similar or different stories about their experiences that you can?
Yeah, so I know a Deborah Crane, and she just got married, and her name's not Crane anymore, but that's her alias name, and it's a woman named Alice, and she's a Mexican woman, and the one that got molested by Gary Stone at training. And there's another woman named Leah, and I don't know if she would talk to you because she's she decided to do favors, sexual favors for these men and to get through the program to finish, see. And they gave her a job as a roller operator, you know, like the year right after I filed the suit, and they said I was the first one on the list and I was going to get a job first. And they gave her a job first, and as a roller operator, and she had never been trained on a roller. That was her first year down there. Okay, so she went down, got on the roller, and it was on a hill, and the roller didn't have any brakes. So it started rolling, and she tried to ride it all the way down, and it turned over and crushed her legs. And I can tell you other instances where this faulty training, see, they just gave her a job. See, she wasn't qualified to even be on a roller. I've been there for 10 or 12 years. Why not give it to somebody qualified? I would have jumped off the thing, you know.
Is it standard operating procedure that rollers don't have brakes?
No.
This was a defective roller?
Yeah. Yeah, they send you out on equipment that most of the time doesn't have any brakes. You got to know how to stop it or how to drop the bucket in the ground or something, you know. And there was this black woman, her name was Annie when I first started, and they were really gung-ho about women, and so they just gave her a job really fast. She was a double minority, you know. So they sent her out on a roller, same thing happened. She's dead. And I think they're responsible because they didn't give her no training on the roller. They just sent her out there.
So she was dispatched to a job?
Yes.
And on the job she died?
Yeah, the roller, same thing happened.
Turned over and crushed.
Do you know what year that was?
79, 80. And then it was a big cover-up, you know, they just covered it up. But she was a really nice lady and had some kids, and if they had trained her, she wouldn't have, you know, she wouldn't have got on a piece of equipment that didn't have no brakes on a hill, you know.
give us any additional or final perspectives on your experience? I know that you were terminated again in December. And I believe you said that the excuse for the termination just a few months ago was that your car wasn't in working order after that incident.
Yeah, my car wasn't in working condition, and I had walked off 2 jobs, and that I had a bad attitude, and I was late one morning for training. And I was